Hello everyone, this is Mod Sci again here with a tutorial on how to do the infamous trigger mod, LED trigger mod I mean. Finally have gotten time and the Vita to do it, so what it will look like when we're done. Today we're going to be modding this with some white surface mount LEDs. Here's what you are going to need. First off is a Phillips head screwdriver. I believe this is size 0. I think anything from 00 to 0 will work. Next you'll need some surface mount LEDs. Right here I have again the white LEDs. Pay attention on the front, this will be important later as to what voltage they run on. So definitely pay attention to that. If it doesn't say on the packaging, contact the person that you bought them from and they should let you know what the voltage for each color is. Also, each color usually has a different voltage, like this is 3 volt to 3.2 volt. I think yellow is usually like 2 volts to 2.2 volts. Blue is like 3.4 to 3.6. So it does matter, and pay attention as to what the voltage is. So next, some fine tip, not pliers, things. These. Want some of these? Tweezers, there we go, tweezers. Couldn't think of the word. Super glue, preferably stuff that dries quickly. That is definitely recommended. Some flux. This is technically optional, however, I would highly recommend it, as soldering without it is incredibly difficult. Speaking of solder, you'll need a soldering iron with a fine tip, very fine tip, since we are going to be doing some very fine soldering today. So, need that. With that, you'll need it's just some X-Acto knife. I just got a cheapy one right here. Next, you'll need, I use personally 30 gauge magnet wire. You can use probably different types of wire, however this I found is the easiest to solder to the SMD light. With that, also some rosin core solder. I just use the regular leaded kind. It's a lot easier to solder with. And something to clean your brush with. I have some brass shavings here. So next we will be disassembling the... Oh, one more thing. Haha, one more thing. Multimeter. You will definitely be needing this to read voltages on the board to determine what point is the best point for your Vita and your lights. So, this is mandatory. You cannot get away without this. So, next we'll be disassembling the Vita. Okay, so now we have our Vita. I'm not going to be going through all turning the screws and whatnot. I'll just show you where the screws are, and then once I get them out, I'll show you how to pry this guy apart. So the screws are on the bottom for this is for the Vita Slim. 2 on the bottom, right there. 4 on back, 1 right there, 1 right there, 1 right there, 1 right there, and 1 under this flap right here. 1 right there. So I'll be right back. I'll unscrew those. Forgot to mention in the beginning, something like this, a pry tool would be helpful for this part. However, you can still get it open with just like a flathead or even your fingernails if you're clever enough, because you're going to want to pry around the seams of the Vita. Again, this can be done with other tools. I recommend one of these, but, you know, to each their own. So I usually start up over by the trigger and get in the seam. As you can see, I got it right in there. And then you work your way around, releasing the clips that are on the inside, just kind of gently prying up. See, there we go, we got one of the clips. There we go. Start up here. God damn, these new systems are really hard to get open. There we go. Oh, come on. Come on, buddy. Come on. Fuck me. Okay, so this tutorial is already going to be long enough, so I just went ahead and pried away the back. I'll link to a disassembly video in the links in the description. It's fairly straightforward. You just take something like either like a tool like this, a pry tool, or even just your fingernails, and work your way around, releasing the clips up along this seam, around the trigger buttons, around here to the bottom, and all the clips will just release if you pry correctly, and then it comes apart like that. And then there's a little ribbon cable right down there that you just lift the tab on. Boom. And there we go. And we're in. And there we go. So from here, geez, there we go. Getting ahead of myself. Okay, so take the triggers out. We'll actually be modding these here in a little bit. But first, we're going to want to remove this black retention piece with these two screws right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, so the screws are out now. Lift up the wires on the battery connector and unplug it from the connector. And lift out the black retention piece. There we go. And then what you're actually going to want to do is plug the battery back in. Like that, just sets in like that. Use your fingers to push it into the connector. And then you're going to want to actually turn on your Vita, because at this point we are going to be looking for points that correspond to the ranges of our LEDs. So we're going to turn on the Vita. And then we are going to get our multimeter. We're going to get our multimeter ready. So wait for this to boot up. Say whatever, we'll fix that later. Okay, there we go. And then keep it on like this, and then grab your multimeter. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to start searching. So we're going to set it to a fairly sensitive setting like this, so we can get a fairly accurate reading. And then put your ground probe to ground. In this case, I'll just use one of the points on the shielding of the. There we go. Can't see that. There we go. One of the points of the connector, and I'll move also this in. Make sure our Vita's still on. There we go. Okay. And then, there we go. Prop it up a little bit for you guys. There we go. So, and then we just start testing points. So just be careful not to bridge any connections together, as it could kill the Vita. This is the point where you want to start being pretty careful. So let's see. So I'll just start testing some points, and once I find a point that corresponds to the 3 volt to 3.2 volt range that we're looking for, I will return. Alright, so I found the point that I need. It took a few minutes. Don't get discouraged if you can't find it right away. It does take a bit of time to find a value that you're looking for within range. I found one that is 3.2 volts, just about. I'm going to show you here. There it is, 3.21, should be within tolerance, so should be good to go with that voltage. So, yay, we found it. Yay, us. Alright, moving right along. So, now that we've done that, we can start prepping the LEDs and starting to prep the triggers as well. But first off, grab some wire, and we're going to start measuring just give or take how much wire you're going to need, because you don't want a big mess of wire in there. So let's see, from here to here, since they're going into triggers, I'll give it, give it a little bit more than you think you'll need, so that it has some slack. I'm going to give it, this much because it's going to this trigger. So get two lengths of each wire that you'll need. So like for this one, it will be, since it's down here, it'll be, probably something like, that with slack should be about right. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those wires, and then we'll move right along. So for this part, grab your soldering iron and some of your solder, and we're going to be tinning the ends of the wire. I'll just show you one part of one of the wires, because it's the same on each ends of the wires. You just want to tin each end. And the nice thing about using magnet wire is that when you tin it, the insulation automatically vaporizes when you tin it. So you just take the tip of your brush, and then you just get some solder on it, and then you kind of, it's hard to do. You need 10 hands to solder. So I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. So I'll clean off my brush, go like that, and then just get a little bit of solder on the end of your wire, like that. And then I don't think my camera's good enough to see it, but if I hold it close, get some focus in here. I don't think you can see it. Damn it, this camera sucks. I don't think you can. Oh well. Well, if you were able to see my wire, you'd see that there's a little bit of silver, and then the rest is red, which is the insulation. And then you know that you've tinned your wire correctly. So go ahead and do that for each end of the wire, and we'll be back in just a second. So this is the size of an SMD 0603 LED, roughly the size of a grain of sand. So that's going to be basically impossible to show you how to solder a wire onto one of these, but I can give you the general technique on how I do it. So yeah, again, this is definitely not for the faint of heart, but if you have the solder skills to do this, then definitely worth it. So just a sec. So what I do when I'm soldering these is I hold it with my tweezers. There we go. I get just a little bit of solder on the end of my soldering iron, and I just barely touch it to the end of the SMD because any excess heat will just melt these guys. Again, you can't see it, but I did get just a tiny bit of solder. I tinned our LED just a tiny bit, and then go to the other side, clean your tip. There we go. Just flip it over. And then you get the other side, just get a little bit of solder on your tip, and then just dab it. And there you go. It's tinned. I'll see if I can show you guys without completely losing it. There we go. There we go. Let's see if I can show you. There it is. You can kind of see that there's a little bit of solder on each end. Also, I'll be posting a picture in the description, an image of what polarity each side is. Oh, that's still out of focus. What polarity each side of the SMD is. They both have lines describing which side is which. I'll post a link in the description again to an image on what they look like. And when you solder the wires on, you'll want to take note as to which one is which, because if you do it the wrong way, you'll burn out the LED. Also, it's a good idea, if this is your first time, buy a bunch of these, because you're gonna mess this up. I messed this up, especially the first time I did this. I probably did this like 100 times before I got it right. So just be patient. Well, not 100, probably like 10 or a dozen times, but be patient. It's hard, but totally worth the payoff. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and solder on my wires to the SMD lights. I'll show you how to do that. The best technique is you're going to want to keep them parallel to each one. So with, let's say this is my these are my two wires that I'm going to be using for one of the lights. You just keep them. Let me focus real quick. There we go. You just keep them parallel to the light. There we go. Keep them parallel as close as possible, because you don't want them going the opposite way, because it can get weird. You don't want them going sideways like that, because it takes up too much room. Just keep them parallel like that, and solder the wires on. And remember, when you do the positive or the negative, just make sure you know which one is which. Just put a little piece of tape maybe on the one that you know is the positive one. Just, again, so you know which one's which, because you don't want to do this multiple times, because it can get quite tedious. So, on to the next step.